Finally, proof Kaitlin Armstrong used her sister's passport plus a $6,350 plastic surgery bill. Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Not that it was ever in doubt, but we now have confirmation from a guy called Zachary Paulson, someone from Don John's in Santa Teresa, who I think he works there. He could be a staffer or he could be a guest, but he witnessed Kaitlin's arrest, and he's provided not just one passport but two to Inside Edition. I'll provide a link to that in the description. One of those passports has got Kaitlin Armstrong's name on it, and the other, yes, is the passport of her sister Christine. Have a look. Now, before we get to the rest of this episode, I'm going to show you the document confirming that she had plastic surgery. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So, Inside Edition also provided a copy of the document. It's a kind of a receipt, possibly a receipt that Kaitlin received following her plastic surgery. It's dated 23rd of June 2022. It appears to be from the Ava Medical Center, or possibly AVA Medical Surgical Center, and it just refers to confirmation that Kaitlin paid $6,350 for some sort of operation, probably on her nose. Now, if you do the math, if she had $12,200 from the sale of the Jeep, well, she had less than $6,000 remaining following the surgery, and even less once you calculate the price of the flight from Austin to LaGuardia, and then the second flight to Costa Rica, and then of course food and accommodation costs. Some sources say Kaitlin was sleeping in the top bunk in the corner of one of the bungalows, while others say she was sleeping below. It's also emerged that Kaitlin kept to herself at Don John's to such an extent that some guests thought that she checked out. She also referred to herself as Ari, which presumably was Kaitlin's own version of turning her surname, Armstrong, Ari Armstrong, into a nickname. Ari had apparently volunteered to work on the front desk and as a yoga instructor at the $50 a night Don John's, also known as the Treehouse Hostel. I've also seen some rates of $17 a night reported, and that's probably for one of the beds in these 6-bed dorm rooms. Ari Armstrong, if that's the name she gave, did not come up in routine searches of the immigration registry databases when the authorities pitched up at the resort. It's likely when her ID didn't check out, authorities asked to see proof of ID, which hostels typically also ask for security purposes. I know because I've stayed in hostels a fair bit when I was a vagabond traveller through Singapore, Scotland and Ireland and Australia. Now, according to the Daily Mail, I'll also put a link to this in the description, Armstrong first arrived at the resort on June 8th, when staff repeatedly turned down her request to work as a yoga instructor. Now, one wonders where she was between May 18th and June 8th. You know, that is almost, is it more than 2 weeks? It's quite a long time that she was somewhere else. So one wonders where she was, or was she staying somewhere else, or was she sleeping on the beach? What was she doing? Was she lying low? She only had surgery on the 23rd of June, if the document from AVA Surgical Center is anything to go by. Now, if we go back to that Daily Mail article, apparently the staff relented, her persistence won the day, and they eventually allowed her to start helping with classes when the teacher that normally gave them was off. So I suppose she probably contributed extra yoga classes, and then also did shifts on the front desk in reception. And then an anonymous source says that describes how Kaitlin was around the resort. They say that she didn't have to work in the morning, and so she often slept late. When she got up, she drank a lot of coffee, and then she would sit apart from others. And interestingly, they noticed this. They also said that Armstrong was strange and would mysteriously only leave the hostel at night before returning late while other guests were fast asleep. And the reason for that was she probably was very aware of being recognized and didn't want to be the subject of conversation, also didn't want to socialize. So she was obviously walking a fine line between trying to engage with this new society and try and make a living and make a life, but also remain separate from it, while her behavior, her actions back home in America, the consequences of that were still sort of rippling outward and were sort of infecting the news media and also social media. And she was probably worried that that was going to find its way to Americans in Costa Rica. Staff were, this according to the article, were apparently bamboozled when cops swooped on the resort and demanded her passport. But then she said that it was in a nearby resort in Tamarindo. One wonders whether that is true. Where was her passport ultimately? The Daily Mail concludes writing about the officers marching her away while Kaitlin remained quiet, looking at the floor. And apparently the hostel workers, and I suppose those staying there, looked on and were just baffled and confused by what was going on. So it does look like Kaitlin was arrested on the spot and she was marched off so quickly to a Costa Rican jail, where I think she still is, that all her personal items were left behind at Don John's, and that is why they were able to show it to the media. You'd imagine that if the arrest had taken a longer period, that Kaitlin would have had time to collect her things and you wouldn't have the staff kind of going through it sort of curiously. In any event, I'm not going to take it further than that. There is some confusion about, is she being extradited or is she being deported? And so it probably is worth mentioning that both actually apply. You can deport someone for breaking immigration law, right? So if you're an illegal immigrant or you've crossed into the country with documents that are fraudulent or in some way defective, and in this case that applies to Kaitlin, right? So she can be deported. And then there's also extradition, where you hand over someone to the jurisdiction of a foreign state where a crime was committed, right? So both of those do actually apply. It'll be interesting to see which one is actually enforced. Possibly the deportation will be the easier and simpler of the two. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.